Hello and welcome. Today I'm here with an absolute legend, known as a great streamer, Gwent content creator, and Gwent caster. I'm here with the one and only Lionhart. Welcome.
Thank you, my friend. Wow, that's quite the introduction. I appreciate it. Good to be here. Good to be here. I'm glad we've finally been able to do this. I know my diary's been a little wild for a while,
Yeah, I
but no,
know.
it's good to be here.
I'm glad you're here. We've actually this has been coming for about 2 months down the line. I mean, this has been in the works for a long time. You've been very
Yeah, it
busy,
has.
had a lot going on, but here you are now. During the
Yeah,
interview, my
we finally
friend,
made it.
finally made it. During this interview, what would you like me to call you? We can just call me John. Keep it easy.
Uh, Lionheart or Matt is fine. My actual name is Matt, so whichever you're more comfortable with, I answer to both. And I
Perfect.
actually do answer to Lionheart, which is really weird now.
You know what? I feel like that's just the part of this internet culture where usernames start to transcend your own name. It's like, and also I
Yeah.
think it's that identity where in esports, for example, you see all these people go by one particular username and people are like, oh, that's Double Lift. Nobody thinks that's Peter. It's just like, that is Double Lift. This entire brand is Double Lift. And maybe a few intimate people know as Peter, which is
Yeah.
interesting. It's different. So ironically, for Gwent pros, they just seem to change their name every other game, but that's all
Oh, I
right.
know. I wish they'd stop because it makes casting so hard.
Oh my gosh, it is.
Uh,
It's impossible to follow like everybody's storyline. If you are not a streamer as well, like everyone's just like, you know what, I'm gonna change my name today. Anywho. So, Matt, my friend, let's go ahead and talk about you because you are the focus of today's interview. They've gone to topics, no big deal. Go ahead and tell me about yourself if you don't mind. Usually people start with something like their educational background, their job history. Pick wherever you feel comfortable.
that's quite extensive. I'm 33 as of like 2 days ago,
Happy
so
birthday.
I'm old in Twitch world, or
Mm-hmm.
so I'm told. Went to university to study history, and then specialised down into the impact of sort of cultural appropriation on African American culture,
Yeah.
specifically the impact that had and how music shifted, blues and jazz music becoming rock and roll, that kind of thing. I trained as a teacher and loved teaching, hated our education system, so I knocked that on the head. I worked in pharmacy for 12 years, ran a company from being a little chain to a national chain in England. Had a great time doing that, then moved on. I now work for Royal Mail in the UK. I am an operations and logistics manager, which is exactly as interesting as it sounds, I promise you. It really is about as entertaining as you would imagine being an operations and logistics manager for Royal Mail could be. I've done a sort of a master's in business management through my various jobs as well, which is really cool and has obviously helped me be able to do the roles I do. More recently, in the last sort of 2 years, I've been streaming a lot as well as working full time. But over the last 2 years as well, I've had multiple knee operations, which have rendered me unable to move quite a lot. Hence why I spend a lot of my life sat exactly where I am right now, because I can't get anywhere else.
Wow, that is a lot. That is crazy. Okay, let's break this down. Let's break this down. I'm gonna go back in time to the very beginning, and we'll just start working our way through your life. And thank you for all that. You were very, very open, and you've done a whole lot. Can't believe it. So tell me. So you said you started off. You mentioned you're a little bit older on Twitch. So I feel like that stereotype is going away because it's not that it was old. Just a bunch of young people found it first, and so like a bunch of 20-year-olds got into it, and then 10 years later, those 20-year-olds are now 30-year-olds, and we fast forward 10 more years.
It's
Those 30-year-olds
kind
will
of
be
true,
40.
right?
I
Yeah.
know. Don't sell yourself short in being old. You're just simply the first wave. You're the first wave, my friend.
Yeah, I have been on Twitch for a very long time. Not necessarily as a streamer, but I do remember the Justin TV days.
Oh man, you're a
I'm,
classic.
I'm pre-Twitch old.
People don't even know that.
But
They don't even know. People these days don't even know Justin TV. I also wasn't there for that, but at least I know the history. Twitch was
yeah, when you say Justin TV, they're like, "What? Who's he? Is he a streamer?" I'm like, "Oh no."
no, yeah, exactly. They don't know this was a garage band website back in the day. That's Twitch's origin story. And then a bunch of gamers started streaming. And they're like, oh, this is working out better. Let's do some pivoting. And then we got to Twitch
Yeah,
and changed
sensible
everything.
pivoting.
You know,
Yeah, that really did change the game.
I still feel, personal opinion, that the reason our streaming isn't more respected and in the future will be is because a bunch of gamers found it first. Like, if people invented computers and the first thing they jumped to was video games, I think business and the adoption of computers would have taken 10, 20 plus additional years. Like, oh, what's that? It's
Completely.
a computer. What does it do? Well, it makes these things called video games. And that would be it. It'd be like, no, there's no such thing as Excel. There's no such thing as, any AI program. It'd be like, yeah, no, it just does video games. But
Just for fun.
Just for fun. Exactly. But so I wouldn't stress that. But you have done a lot, right? That's one of the things I think that separates you from a lot of personalities in the streaming world and the video game world, where there are a lot of 20-year-olds and even like teenagers who are very, who are there playing Gwent or other games. But you have a long history. So let's dive into your studies. What drew you to the impact on cultural appropriation on Africa, specifically music? That is, I got to tell you, I'm an international relations major. I was expecting to go from like, I studied international relations, but then I decided to focus on this part of the world. And then you're like, I focused on specifically Africa. I was like, great. Cultural appropriation, specifically music. I'm like, okay, you're going real niche. Tell me about it.
It didn't start that way. So I went to university. I took a gap year. My birthday's in August, which meant I was one of the youngest in my school year in England. So I turned 18 just as the school year ended. And most of my friends were already about to be 19. I took a whole year off before I went to university, and I worked, I traveled, I moved to Ireland very briefly for a couple of months, which was great. And then I decided to go to university. Now, I've always been very lucky. I learned the way that the English education system teaches. So school was easy. A's, no problem. I didn't have to try. But that also meant I didn't necessarily find a great deal of joy in a lot of it because it didn't challenge me. It wasn't fun. It wasn't new. It wasn't outside of my comfort zone. And when I was thinking, do I go to university or not? It came down to, well, what would I actually enjoy learning about? I don't care if it's the thing I'm best at. What do I want to learn about? And I thought history is fascinating because it's just an echo of what we do now. We follow this ridiculous cycle of repeating an echoed version of the same things over and over again, assuming we're going to learn, being super arrogant, and then repeating the same mistakes. It's just delightful. And it's maddening how much studying history reframes the way you look at the present. It's really weird. And I know a couple of other people, like Crozier, for instance, had very similarly, how he views certain things. I've got so much respect for him. He's such a cool guy and very intelligent, very well educated. Love him, and just a cool dude. But yeah, the way, and I didn't realize this was a thing until he was talking about it, and I sort of consciously thought, I do that. But yeah, so that history challenged me. It was interesting, it was exciting, but when I first got to university, it was completely broad. It was American history, because we'd never really studied it in England, because it wasn't a thing. Then there was like Renaissance Europe. There was the history of sex and gender, which was actually really fascinating. But and then over the course of the 3 years, honestly, it was one specific lecturer whose passion really was infectious. How much he cared and how great he was at imparting information without imprinting his own bias. It was phenomenal to me. It was impressive to watch. And I found him really charismatic, so I enjoyed his lectures. So I followed his lectures, effectively. And plus, to be honest, if someone said I've got to do a dissertation, it's got to be 10,000 plus words, it should be on something I enjoy, like blues and jazz music.
And there you go.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, to be honest. That's how it ended up happening. It was just riding the wave of what do I enjoy? What do I want to explore?
I really like that. Yes, you said riding that wave. You took a year off, you did some awesome stuff, and then you just follow. You didn't go for like, I want to go into business right out of the gate anyway. You said, look, I want to find something I really like. This lecture is really good, and I'm just gonna get through college or university. But same thing. I think it reflects on the fact that these days a lot of jobs just, unless you have a very specific degree for a very specific job, a lot of times it's get a degree and then go find your job afterwards. And I think your job list you gave me really highlights that fact. So I'm assuming, maybe I could be wrong, let me know. I'm assuming you have no regrets about what you studied in university, even though I do not think you're probably going to get a job studying, unless you want to be a professor, probably not going to get a job studying the impact of cultural appropriation in Africa and how it
No,
relates to music.
no, not, and I don't. No, I don't regret it at all. I was never going to go like I could have progressed further, taken a master's, sort of
Mm-hmm.
focused down onto that, then tried to and use it as part of what I was going to teach or something like
Uh-huh.
that. But again, the education system is very rigid unless you're at a higher education level, and even then, to some extent, is
Mm-hmm.
pretty rigid. But no, I don't. Anytime you learn something, I don't regret that,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was, however it got there. If I learned something new, even if what I learned, not necessarily the information, but about other people, about
Mm-hmm.
other cultures, about how the world works outside of little England bubble,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good thing. So no, I don't regret it at all. In fact, I loved every second of it, and I would relive it in a heartbeat.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about this next move, because you leave university and you go into teaching, and you hated the education system. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I love teaching. When I was a teenager, I was a volunteer youth worker
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons, and it was really good and it was really enjoyable working and like getting to experience working with young people as they do things was really really fun. I
Mm-hmm.
always liked the idea of being a teacher, and I thought that's something I could do
Mm-hmm.
because I've always been able to do that. I then qualified as a teacher, and my experience and having spoken to every teacher I worked with on every placement, every single one of them, without fail, whether they'd been there 6 months or 16, 20, 30 years, was run,
Mm.
run. Do not do this because you are.
Really?
And I know me, and
Okay.
I know I could not be a good teacher if I'm teaching someone to tick a box, not ask a question. And that is what our education system boils down to. And
Crazy.
it's difficult because it's very rigid in the way you're supposed to teach
Okay.
which is I find really challenging. I'm lucky, like I said, I learn the way we're currently taught, which is
Mm-hmm.
easy for me. Great. I
Yeah.
can sit there and my mind just absorbs the information and I'm great. My sister, just as intelligent as me, incredibly capable individual, learns in a completely different way and was labeled not me because she wasn't getting the grade she was supposed to. She doesn't learn the
Mm-hmm.
same way. So there was no, but she's an
Mm-hmm.
incredibly intelligent, bright person. And as soon as she came out of traditional education, she absolutely flourished. But
Interesting.
the amount
Mm-hmm.
of pressure on the teacher, especially as class sizes grow, to get across what is written down, I know I would become a bad teacher. We all had teachers who didn't like being teachers. You could see it in their eyes, you could tell. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be that guy. The job of a teacher is really important because you literally shape the way the next generation of people learn about things, but about themselves. And if you can't do that with joy, you shouldn't do it. So I didn't do it. I went, nope, bye.
Interesting. It's feels kind of, it's very tragic in the sense of you obviously have a passion for this. You even had already worked with youth previously in a volunteer
Yeah.
capacity, and you also coming out of college. I imagine you have a large respect for teaching because you've been pivoting your
Huge.
whole. You made your whole degree very much tied to one lecturer who's really passionate and did a great job conveying information, and then you go into teaching. It's like run, just get out of here, abandon ship, abandon hope.
Yeah.
That's so disappointing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I still don't regret the skills I learned.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to teach was really enjoyable, even if it was learning how to teach rigidly, because you can look at it constructively and pick holes in it. You
Uh-huh.
can then take those skills and use them. In the jobs I've been in, I've usually been in leadership or management roles. I'm
Mm-hmm.
regularly a coach, which is completely different to management and completely different to leadership. And understanding those differences can make you better at your job, and it can help in any role you do bring the best out of people. So
Mm-hmm.
any role I've done has always involved an element of that, and I've always loved that. So those skills I don't use to educate young people,
Mm-hmm.
but I use to coach and train my current staff in all the roles I've ever worked in. So it was initially disheartening, but there are worse things in the world than finding out, you know, okay, I've got to pivot my career here, you know.
Yes, and I think you are somebody who was already prepared to do that in the sense of you didn't pick a degree that had a very set job and you go there and it turns out you don't like that job. No, you had a flexible degree. You've already had a flexible history taking a year off from school. You spent some time living in Ireland, working. Not everybody takes a gap year. We already had that
No.
additional freedom, a bit of real world experience. Say, look, teaching's not my thing. And then you jump to what I kind of in my mind flagged immediately as, wow, this is going to be pretty crazy. You worked at a pharmacy and you helped run the company and take it to a national chain. Tell me about that. It seems like, so I will say, before we dive into this, there's something about, like, some 20-year-olds will go, because you got to be in your early 20s here, will have a job and they work their way up corporate and such. And then I feel like sometimes you just, as a 20-year-old, stumble your way into, wow, I have a lot of responsibility all of a sudden. It's probably extreme. So tell me about this.
Okay, so I actually started working at this pharmacy as like a counter boy when I was 14. They thought I was 16, but we'll skip over that. It was a week before my birthday, and I applied for a job, and I said, "Oh, I'm not 16 yet, but my birthday is next week." Not my 16th birthday, but that wasn't relevant.
I love
They
that.
then hired me, and 6 months later clocked it. But they liked me by then, so I got to stay. And I worked with them all the way through my A levels, so like higher education, 17, 18. I worked with them through my gap year when I wasn't in Ireland, although they did have a site in Ireland as well, so I did some work for them while they were there. And then I worked all the way through university. I worked full time as well with them.
Wow.
So I lived in Cheltenham, and I would drive back to work for the pharmacy chain. So I'd work about 40 hours a week. It was chaos, but it was necessary. So I worked with them, did all of that, and then I came out of university, was like, cool, thanks guys, this was amazing. I've done my thing. At this point, I was trained as a medicine dispenser, effectively, working in the pharmacy, making sure everything was right, and sort of dealing with patients and stuff like that, which was fun. And then the intention was I was going to teach, and I was actually at one point I'd got a job in New York, actually, well, just outside New York. I was going to be working with kids who've been involved in like gang violence, and they were being like the rehabilitation of that. It was really, I was so excited. The job was there, the house was there, the flights were booked, and unfortunately 2 days before I was due to fly, my granddad passed away, and I refused to go. I was like, nope, not playing, I'm staying with my nan, that is it. So that all stopped. And I'd already said goodbye to my boss, and I knew the company that I was working with. They'd got about 10 sites at the time, and the owner, lovely guy, genuinely very nice man. He'd started to want to keep expanding, but couldn't do everything himself already. He was already struggling. And I contacted him and basically said, look, I'm supposed to be going to America. There's been a change of plans. So you now have an opportunity to hire me to run your company. It will cost you this much money. And he went, okay, where are you? And I told him, and he said, I'll be there in 30 minutes and we'll discuss it. And yeah, that ended up going from 10 sites to 96 before I left, which was great. I had
96 sites. That's a huge job. How many years did that take?
From then, it was about 7 years. We bought out a couple of reasonable companies, like reasonably sized companies. It was great fun. I loved that job. It was so stressful because they were all over the country, and you'd work like 100 hours a week, and you'd never stop, and you always had to be available. But it was so much fun. I loved that job. I really did.
That's unbelievable. Okay, hold on. I feel like I gotta spoil the end and then go back. So it's gonna be a little out of chronological order. I gotta know why'd you leave, and then I want to learn more about the things you learned there and a few other questions I have for you, philosophically.
So I'm one of those people that I need to constantly challenge myself. I have to do something new. The next step is always the thing I want to do. So the pharmacies have been building and building and building and building, and we'd taken over a company with 10 sites. Then it was a company with 20 sites. Then it was 32 sites, and we're adding all of these to our portfolio. But by the time you get to that sort of position, I felt a little bit more detached, which was boring, but also nothing new was happening. It was, cool, let's buy something that's twice as big as the last one. Is it going to be exactly the same? Yep. Cool, done now, bored now.
Yep.
Next. So to try and sort of satiate that, we purchased like post offices because you can contract them, and we placed them inside our pharmacies because it just made sense same demographic, same customer base, was really convenient for the communities around, because a lot of these post offices were being closed down at the time after
Yep.
privatization and stuff. So we created almost like community hubs, and it was fascinating because it was something new to get my teeth into. And I was doing all of the training and stuff with them because I had to be what they called a postmaster. And Royal Mail is a big old beast of a company. It is. The only way I can describe it is it's like life on Mars. It's like going back in time, or it certainly was when I first walked in the door. But one of them who was doing the training at the time said, would you ever consider moving? And I was like, no. And he said, are you sure? And then we were talking over the couple of weeks I was training and stuff, and he was explaining the scope of change that Royal Mail needed to go through in the next, at the time, probably 10 to 20 years. And I was like, oh, that sounds exciting. Oh, let's go. And then there were conversations, and it was financially sensible for me to take that job. And I was like, okay, new challenge. I can support my family even more efficiently. Let's go. And I moved.
Wow. Okay. That's so interesting. Hopper, just going through the next challenges. Okay. Let me back up. I do want to pick up there in a second. I did go out of order because my mind was screaming like, wow, what an interesting thing. You have this huge success. And then let me write one more note to myself. Instead of all right, perfect. All right, so let me go back a little bit, because I think up until now I'm noticing a philosophy in how you're approaching your life, and I would say there's really kind of like 2 to 3 elements to it. Let me know if I'm on the point, and then comment where I'm right or wrong. One is you like to seek out things you enjoy. Straightforward, even if it means deviating from a normal path. Screw a normal degree, get something really niche. Screw going straight from A levels to university. Go to Ireland, go work. And then, in addition to that, you also have this other current of work doesn't need to be bad. And I'm very curious about this.
It can't be bad. Oh, we spend so much time at work. If you hate your job, you are going to be miserable.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think it's really interesting because you've been working for ages. You've been doing 40-hour work weeks in university while balancing a degree. By the way, would you be willing to share why you felt like it was required for you to do that? Because that's insane.
Family stuff.
Okay.
I had a very difficult childhood, shall we say.
Okay.
I was homeless for a while. It was a whole thing. My family needed support, effectively, emotionally, physically, and financially in many senses. So that was my responsibility as far as I was concerned. So I worked.
Wow. Dang, you went through a whole lot. So you worked, and you were bearing this responsibility. So now I'm seeing like the bigger, the story, right? You have a ton of responsibility when you're young. You continue to try to make the most out of life despite what sounds like unbelievably insane circumstances. I mean, most people aren't going to experience homelessness, especially
I would recommend it.
Yeah, you're in the UK, right? Like UK.
Yeah.
It's not like you're in a country that is lacking in wealth, but there is obviously people falling in between the cracks. I'm in the United States myself, and I know there's plenty of people falling between the cracks. And it sounds like that was where you started, and you worked hard from the sounds of it to climb your way out. You got an opportunity. You were able to call up basically CEO, say, look, here's the price. I'll run your company for you. And you did what had to be done. And then you execute it all the way through. How fascinating. Do you have any advice for
wild? It was wild. I'm not gonna lie. Not always good, but yeah, I'm here now.
You're here now. Are you proud of everything that you've done so far?
Yeah, I mean, you always look back and think, what could I do differently? What could I have done better? There are things I've experienced that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And I wholeheartedly mean that. But regardless of everything that happened, good, bad, indifferent, I am who I am and where I am because of those combined things. I have the things I have in my life and the people I have in my life on the back of all of that chaos. I'll get into it, I'm sure, at some point. My whole life exploded in 2019. Long story, but if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be streaming right now. I would not be a caster for CD Projekt Red. I would not have met some of the most incredible friends I have ever met because I just wouldn't have. I wouldn't. And I'd have a completely different life. And I'm sure I would be making the most of that life. but I only live this one, so I may as well try and enjoy this one.
I like that philosophy. Basically saying, look, bad things are going to happen, and truly terrible things, especially from what you're implying. Some awful stuff happened, and we'll get to 2019 now that you've set the flag for that to make sure we spend some extra time there. But I think about this a lot when it comes to privilege, where you're given the life you get. You are born to somebody, and you don't know where in the world that person is. You don't know what wealth they have. You don't know what their situation is. And you did nothing to deserve to be there. You got put there against your will.
So true.
No one said, there was no God that like sat there like, okay, by the way, Matt, what kind of life are we looking? We have a difficulty meter. Right. You can pick your IQ level. You can pick, a couple of things here, there. What kind of climate do you like? Do you want it to be a little hot, a little cold where you're born? It's like, no, you're just born. Hello.
Right. I don't remember a checkbox to work out where I was spawned.
Yeah.
That's how RPGs work, not how life works, or at least to my knowledge, anyway.
Yes.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the word you use, privilege, is completely relevant. And it's something you have to constantly be aware of because, like we said, I was homeless. Yes, I worked my ass off to get where I am, but there was a massive stroke of luck. Good fortune, privilege that also made that there are hundreds of people who are in unfortunate situations who work constantly to try and get out of them and don't succeed. I was lucky enough to, in part, because I look like this. Yes. And I've got to recognize that fact because it's true. It's why I consciously try and always be aware of my own and the impact it could have because it matters.
It does, and everyone has their own circumstances they're born with, and whether it's negative or positive. And you're right, looking like this is definitely a benefit in the modern world. Does it really? That's how it's a social construct. It's not like this actually is influence. It's like melatonin skin, I think is what it's called. And like, that's it.
Right.
Literally.
I mean, I'm effectively allergic to sun. I'm that ginger, but I live in England, so we don't really get sun. So it's even easier.
Yeah, no, it is. It's the strangest thing. In one game, it's a South Park game, they had a difficulty meter, and the higher you increased it, the darker the skin your character got.
I mean, they're not,
they're not wrong.
That's kind of terrifying as a concept.
No, and one thing, we're deviating hard, but I like that at least in the United States, I feel like people are becoming more and more aware of the consequences of that, and I hope we continue to make progress, but progress is always too slow in that area when it comes to addressing racism on skin color. Racism
it's a big topic right now in England on the back of the European Football Championships because of, the overtly racist culture that England has in large parts, unfortunately. And it's becoming more talked about and it's becoming more addressed because people in a position of, particularly footballers, in a position where they are just not going to suffer it and tolerate it anymore. And communities now starting to rally behind that. It makes a difference. Like, I'm a Liverpool fan, so everyone will now switch off because yikes. But there is a footballer that plays for Liverpool. His name's Mohamed Salah. People fear what they don't know because they're corralled into otherisms. You're told they're the problem. Ignore the fact that I just stole all this stuff from you. It's that person that doesn't look like you. Now, Mohamed Salah is a Muslim footballer from Egypt. And anti-Muslim sentiment in Liverpool, of all places, dropped 40+% on the back of him being there for 6 months. Why? Because they were exposed to someone else's culture. The more you learn, nobody knows everything. Nobody has the right answer to everything. There's no one right answer to this stuff. So experience other things, learn and grow, and you will be a better human for it. Or at least I think so.
I mean, I would agree. I think getting exposed to other cultures and travel is so eye-opening. I know, and sometimes you sit there and you're like, wow, I really prefer that. So let me give you the most minor of examples. So I lived in China for 5-6 months. That was where I studied abroad.
Cool.
Yeah, not too shabby. I will say it ages really well. When I say that, everyone's like, it feels really good. But I remember here's the tiniest example of just exposure to other culture. Shanghai. I was living in Shanghai, and their elevator culture is my favorite thing in the world. I have no patience for the United States elevator culture. Now, this is so specific, but bear with me. There's a point to this. In Shanghai, it's a city that's always going and nobody cares about anybody else. It's fast. I really like that pace. An elevator, what you do is you go and you click your floor, and if you don't see anyone coming, you start smashing. I mean, you smash over and over the elevator close button so you can go a little bit faster. In the United States, you push the button, you'll wait 20 seconds. Nobody will be coming. It's just they don't put the effort into clicking. And I know that seems really niche, but every society in the world does things differently, and it's definitely 100% true that as a unique individual, you will probably find things in other societies you perform more than your current one. And you're not going to know it until you travel. And when you start traveling and start getting respect and experiencing other cultures, it can be as small as elevators. It can be as big as food and communities and government practices. Like, it can be tiny or massive. Getting exposure and thinking about things more holistically and meeting people and humanizing people goes so far.
It really does, because we are ultimately all just people.
Yeah, no, we're just people doing our thing, and it's so sad that that gets lost, and it's historically been so lost. But people are at least talking about it more, making a little bit of progress here there. Going back to you, would you have any advice? And no, it's all good. These going into topics is all good. When you mentioned Crozer earlier, when he was here, we talked all about his Africa stories and chat, his opinion on teaching and stuff. But no, we just go wherever. Don't worry about it. And we might go down that path. Literally yesterday, I was like sleep deprived on stream. My community can handle anyways. We're talking about Afghanistan and politics and racism. I was like,
mine are very used to me doing that as well. It's fine.
Perfect.
There are topics, and I can understand why content creators try to avoid it. It's difficult. You're on a camera. You are the only person that can be seen, and everything you say could be used, clipped, blah, blah, blah. But we are in a world where everything has gone from try and talk to be as divisive as possible, be as far away from each other as possible. And if you don't agree with me 100%, you are wrong. Or at least that's some of how England's culture has been more recently, and from what I've experienced, bits of American political culture as well kind of went that way, and we followed you guys.
You're aware of that?
Yeah, I mean, there was, you kind of, but I'm of the opinion that if you can have a conversation with someone based in fact, not based in what I saw on my uncle's Facebook wall, that's a good thing. I don't know everything. Like, I pick up 2 newspapers on a Sunday. I pick up The Guardian, which is a traditionally left-leaning newspaper, and I pick up The Telegraph, a traditionally right-leaning newspaper. But they're broadsheet newspapers with actual journalists who actually research things. They'll research the same topic, and they will give me an argument about it from 2 different angles, and I will consider both. Because that gives me a broader set of information.
I love it.
I am not defined by, I will always agree with this human because they are... What? No, of course not. Like, nobody is perfect, and no one direction is perfect. So as long as you're both trying to get to the same goal, if there's a logic and a humanity to the way you're going about it, and you can rationalize that, fine. Freedom of speech is not freedom of platform at the end of it, in my opinion. I don't have to listen to you just because you like it.
No, I agree. I think we're going to keep on the topic for longer. We'll come back to you. Topic's good. I think one of the things I find in the modern day world is kind of the consequence of how capitalism and media interact. Because so let me be really blunt. I would consider myself capitalist. I really like capitalism. Early on when I was growing up and going to college, I had doubts about it, and I took a lot of economics courses. But over time, more warmed up to capitalism. But there are a lot of downsides to capitalism and a lot of consequences. And some industries thrive under capitalism, but media is one that really doesn't. And here's why. In my opinion, here's why. Media doesn't get paid on being honest. They don't get paid on trying to tell you uncomfortable truths, but they get paid on is how long will you interact with it, or pay for it in general. And there are some serious downsides to that, because a media company can make more money lying to you or exaggerating to you if it keeps you engaged than actually telling you a more moderate view or the truth. And that polarizes people quickly.
You just described a tabloid newspaper or 100%. An opinion-based news show. It's all about clicks. It's all about how many times people interact with it. The scary thing about media in a capitalist world, and I suppose media in general, is the decision and the direction of what is shared is based on well, in the Western culture, about 5 men's views, because they own pretty much every news media
Yeah.
in the world. And those 5 men have an agenda, and they buy up all the big ones, and then they buy up all the little ones and feed into local news. And your local news stations all across your country will be giving you the same kind of stories based on what is convenient for those remarkably wealthy men. And that's problematic, to say the least.
I do not think
There's no perfect answer, unfortunately, right? Because you can then say, oh, yeah, but that's fine. But in a communist culture, the media is also heavily controlled. I agree. It's exactly the same problem on both sides. It's just who's doing the controlling. And how do you find a sensible middle to that where the information that's being disseminated is good? Like, the internet should be the best thing that the human race has ever created. And yet it's probably the most dangerous and divisive thing we've ever created.
No, I agree. I think it's because the internet's so driven by just quick dopamine and getting addicted to stuff. I agree. I think there is for people too. I think one thing you nailed that people often forget is how many local newspapers are owned by one conglomerate. Same with local television, because newspapers fading out a little bit, but local television in the United States, a lot of them are owned by one particular corporation called Sinclair. And if you've not heard about this and you watch local television, you should.
I have.
You have? Okay, you're good. I feel like you're up to date on the stuff. I'm lecturing to the people listening to this, but Sinclair owns a ton and should be super careful about that. There's some really creepy YouTube videos. You go like Sinclair stories or something like that, you'll see it. They just basically force feed stories on a corporate level to all the local news stations. I'll have to say verbatim, very specific stuff. It's super creepy. Way to counteract it.
It is, and I've seen it.
Excellent. No, I don't know if you're a big fan of John Oliver. I'm a big fan of John Oliver. Take a shot in the dark. Last week tonight, yeah, I had a feeling. Okay, carrying on, finishing up the point, is one way to counteract it, I feel like, is to pay for your news. Find a news source, one or two you trust, and put down your wallet and saying, look, who owns this station? You should know who owns your news source and say,
who is telling me this?
Yes, who is telling me what agenda they have, and then have multiple. You do a great job with the idea of the Guardian and Telegraph. Two very different owners, two very different agendas. You can at least compare. Though most of them all have the agenda of big corporations are good. Always keep that one in mind.
Yeah, and that's always something you have to... Ultimately, I'm of the opinion that politicians should have to look like race cars. As far as I'm concerned, a politician's jacket should look like a Formula One car. I want to know who you're sponsored by so that I can moderate what you say based on why you're saying it. I would that should be a thing. That should be a legal requirement.
Like that.
If you have just been given $10 million by BP, I want a BP tattoo across your forehead so that every time you speak, I know why. Is this your opinion? Is this your constituents' opinion and something that is genuinely going to be good on a social, economic, cultural, environmental, whatever? Or is it the money is burning in your pocket? And it should be like the same for media. If you engage with a media source, you can read it, you can grab it, that's fine. You can fact check it. But what is the agenda of the article? If you've studied any kind of creative writing, any kind of literary, what is the purpose of this? What is it trying to tell you? And then why is it trying to get you to believe that? They're very important questions.
I agree. Let me toss something I noticed in the U.S. election recently. I don't know if it applies to the UK, but I have a feeling, given how big Rupert Murdoch is and the changes to media, that you might also have experienced this and seen it before. What's your take? So in the U.S. election, like the 2021, even a little bit before that, where Fox News, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, and they put out a take that wasn't pro-Trump, wasn't totally pro-Trump. Now, obviously, Trump's very conservative, but Trump is a really divisive character in the United States because he also has some very liberal views as well, an unbelievably liberal view on foreign policy. And so, in some aspects neither party would agree of. But he's a little bit all over the place. And so it makes sense that Fox News at times would criticize him.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed that Fox News really struggled with was if they criticized him, two other networks had really popped up. Newsmax and one called One America Network, OAN. I know it might be a network or news, whatever. It's OAN. And what Fox News started to have to do, and there's been articles about how even the executives at Fox are feeling like it's getting out of control. if they started to publish bad stories about Trump, instead of believing, or ones that say, hey, maybe it's worth criticizing here, viewers would start switching over to networks that didn't criticize. And I
And
thought that was a huge weakness to media and capitalism, where if you stop believing your network and just switch to what you want, it's more profitable for those
this
networks and you'll keep switching.
it's quite scary because Fox News and that opinion-based news culture that they are certainly, and Rupert Murdoch is a big purveyor of, created this beast, or at least helped thrust this beast to be a big problem.
I agree.
We have this ability as humans to try and put ourselves in a little bubble, and everything outside of our bubble is wrong and evil and bad. It's really difficult because, especially in the way that Facebook and the algorithms on these websites work, they know you better than you know you.
Yes.
So they will show you things that they know you will like, true, false, or otherwise, irrelevant, even if it is divisive, even if it is hate-filled. We are now, and probably the generation above me particularly, is so conditioned to see and instantly believe something that already supports their own prejudice. Don't look into it. Don't try and widen that. It supports my prejudice. It must be right. I don't like this person, and we're almost into like cultist deityism, where somebody, it doesn't matter what they do, I support them.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what? Sexually assault someone? No, I support him, and I will die on this hill. Shot someone? Doesn't matter. That's fine. Broke the law? Cool. Attempted coup? Don't worry about it. I support him. And when you get to that stage, and Fox News and are in that awkward situation, and my heart bleeds for them, where if they then try and pivot slightly, it's a real problem for them because their viewers are conditioned to go there because it supports their own prejudice. And capitalism will be an opportunistic beast. It will look at it and go, oh, we can take all of their viewers away. And it doesn't matter if we agree with what we're doing or saying because it pays.
It does.
We have a news network here based on Fox that has just been created called GB News.
I haven't heard of this.
Yes, it is an opinion-based news show. You haven't because nobody watches it. It got 0 viewers from multiple parts of the day.
Okay.
England's political cycle is basically America 5 years later.
Okay.
We follow a very mimicky style of how America runs, and then like a British version of it, basically. And our politicians will use America's political cycle as a way of being not quite them, so I can get away with it, effectively. Like, Boris Johnson is Trump light, effectively.
Except
and
I think he's
probably
a bit more
slightly
savvy.
more devious, but slightly more intelligent at the same time.
Yes.
So, but yeah, he is just as problematic because he's cleverer, and that's what worries me. But that's a whole tangent.
I will.
But yeah, I agree. People will support their own prejudices, and that's becoming more and more a problem because the news feeds that we incorporate now, it's not local news and who I saw down the shops and who I chatted to at the school gates. It's what the algorithm thinks you will already believe, and it doesn't. You never get the counter argument anymore, which is why, at least it's why I think we've been getting more and more divisive, because we're being fed what it thinks we believe, and eventually that gap widens, and it's really scary.
Yes, and people just keep going in. And stuff like Facebook also, the social sites, Twitter, can know that you will interact with what you want to hear more, and they'll just feed it to you. What was it going to be? Mix America. Oh, I wanted to comment on Boris Johnson. Yeah, I will say, when we're going through Trump, now you can probably pick up from the chat, if people are listening to this, I did not vote for Trump. I did not. In either election. It was probably not, that is even, could I someday vote for a conservative candidate? Sure. But it would actually have to be somebody fiscally conservative, not socially conservative. Like, there's a huge difference between what type of conservatism I'm more sympathetic towards.
Yeah, I mean, your politics is very different than our politics because your Democratic Party is our right-wing party, effectively.
Yes. People don't appreciate that.
American left and European left are not the same thing. They're not even close.
Yeah.
So when we look at, I'll take Joe Biden as a really brief example. He would not be left-wing here. He wouldn't, and I don't even think most Americans really think he is, because he is quite conservative. Some of the stuff he's doing seems quite liberal, but yeah, he certainly would be a Tory here, which is a conservative.
Yeah,
for
so
example.
I agree. United States, what I've found is our Democratic Party has figured out that if they just keep getting more and more conservative, like the country keeps shifting conservative, so if we back up, the old liberal candidates would not be. I mean, taxes were much higher, things were very different, but these days, the liberal candidates are pretty conservative. You could see a Joe Biden or even a Hillary Clinton run as a Republican and focus on the fiscal aspects and be able to work,
Yep.
right? They would just be less willing to spend
Yep.
money and they could be elected. Well, could have been back in the day. Now the social
Yeah,
aspects
now
of
no,
it
but
way more
yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
One of the things I find, I did want to comment on this. This has been a very good conversation. I'm enjoying this. The algorithms that run social media sites are fascinating because what they also can do is look at the people you're associated with, figure out what they like, and feed you that, which also helps serve to insulate you. That is actually
It's terrifying.
yes, it is a big part of how the internet works. Is if they can figure out how what your social network is, they can feed you exactly what they want. And the most extreme example of this, though, ironically, did a lot of good, is China's financial social credit system, which was or not social credit, credit. They're just like a credit score. They're credit scores. That's what I'm looking for. Where Alibaba, are you familiar with Alibaba?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Perfect. So right, this effectively Chinese Amazon, they're very different companies, same idea. Tons of shopping, tons of power. They are able to use artificial intelligence to construct people's credit scores very quickly and give out loans to parts of the country that just don't have access to traditional banking. So instead
wild,
of
right?
having these secret conglomerates that are hooked up with the banks in the United States, we have 3 main companies that do this. They just like, oh, you're a poor rural farmer? Well, based on what you've purchased on using Alibaba's different services, based on who you're associated with, who we can connect you with, we pretty much know roughly your credit score. We'll sign it to you in like 10 minutes, and you can get a loan now. Just crazy. They know so much. They know They know how likely you are to pay back money on a borrow and give you an interest rate for it. That's insane. In minutes.
And we haven't even cracked quantum computing yet. God knows how we survive when we do that. Well, we
It's
kind
gonna
of
be-
have, actually,
We're getting
very
closer.
recently. But they've
It'll
worked
be-
out
it'll
how
be
to
in our
super cool
lifetime.
the chips. Yeah, it will be. I think it will be in the next decade, to be completely honest, which is both incredibly entertaining, phenomenally exciting, and petrifying simultaneously. But hopefully it could be the saving grace of everything we've done rather than, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It is scary.
Yeah, I've always had a more optimistic view on history, but there definitely is going to be some things done wrong with quantum computing. The ability to go so hard, so fast, and learn so much in just moments, it's going to be... I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is military, but it'll be...
I mean,
Military always comes
quantum.
first.
It could be exciting because quantum computing should instantaneously eradicate disease.
Essentially.
In
It
theory,
depends.
the reason that diseases we can't quantify what drugs work certain ways. Vaccinations, a quantum computer can run millions of calculations for possible feasible vaccines in seconds, whereas a normal computer will take years. All of that, it should fundamentally change the way we understand our species.
Yes.
But on the other side, that also goes for the mysteries of the universe, weaponry, explosives. Blah, blah, blah.
What makes the most money? What gives you the highest dopamine rush? It'll be an interesting adventure as computers get better, and this is going to be that next breakthrough. Calculations and algorithms that were not possible before do become possible. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's the thing. The algorithm is already much smarter than we are, and that is a worrying realization. If you Google baby names today, 9 months from now, you will get ads for nappies, and it will happen.
yeah.
It's
There was
why
that.
when you think you have a conversation with someone, and then your phone shows you an advert for it, like later that day, and you go, "Oh my god, it's listening." No, it just knows you well enough to know you would think about this right now.
Yes.
That is mind blowing.
And that's so much scarier. It's more than just.
That's worse.
It is. It's like I don't need to
so
listen to
much
you.
worse.
Based on.
I wish they were listening.
It'd feel much more reliable. I think there was that time where, what was it? It was 2 things. Oh god, it's been a long time. It was Daily Show back with Jon Stewart. There was somebody who found out who started getting ads for having a kid and like diapers and such before she announced she was pregnant. They just casually figured it out and started giving ads. And then there was another one that was somebody was still not public that they were gay, and they were getting hit by advertisements for gay cruises. And it was just like, the algorithms are figuring out what you're trying to keep secret or private before you've even told. And that is incredible. I mean, that's also why you see, information is power. Information is money. Google will do it. Google makes like $30.
We are now the product, not the purchaser.
Correct. That's why Google is free. That is.
Yeah, because we're the product.
We are the product. Our attention is the product. Oh, it's so wild. So wild. All right, let's jump back to your history a little bit here. Jump back. Let's go ahead. So, and then I'm sure we'll find another tangent. But I did want to ask you about what I thought was an interesting moment, and which is you choose to leave after building out Atlas Pharmacy, 96 locations. You've mastered mergers. You've mastered a ton of skills, training people, management. That's the only way that's all going to be possible, right? It's just like a given your success story. And you go to Royal Mail out of everywhere, an old company that is going to be innovative. However, it surprised me you didn't do something like a startup or start your own business. Tell me why you went to Royal Mail, a large company, instead of leaning into your new strengths. You were able to grow a small company to a medium-sized company. Tell me about that.
So a lot of my decisions are based on not what would be most necessarily enjoyable for me. I will find joy in whatever I do, because otherwise I just won't do it. But again, supporting my family is really important to me. My mom, my brothers, my mother is particularly unwell, can't work, and looks after my two brothers who have various issues. Now, their quality of life and enjoyment is not something that should be stopped just because they can't do certain things. As a result, I will always make sure that they have everything they need. If I don't I took the role at Royal Mail, it paid considerably better, it was a new challenge. It would have been amazing, because I could start a business, there was loads of cool stuff that we could have done at the time, lots of opportunities, but that would have been a risk at the time, because it would have needed 2 or 3 years to take off. That 2 or 3 years could have been very difficult for them. For me, I could deal with it. For them, I won't accept it. So yeah, that was basically the reason why, to be honest. It means that I can have a good quality of life and give them a good quality of life, which matters. So that's the main reason.
Do you have any, that is noble, right? That's that noble sacrifice, still trying to find joy. Do you have any regrets, or did you just say, you know what, this is what needs to be done? Back.
I do it again every single time. I do it now, I will do it forever. Because if the boot was on the other foot, if it was them and I was in their shoes, every one of them would do it for me. Because that's just what you do, right?
Very noble.
Or at least that's what I think. That's what I would like to think, and I know they would if they could. So they didn't choose to be in that situation. They don't want to be in that situation. You know, it's not. I'm just going to not do anything. That's not the case at all.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't they get to have a nice life as well? Right.
Yeah.
And sure, that means I do a different job than perhaps I'd love. Right now, I'm in a position where I could stream full time and be fine, just me. Yep. I could cover what I need, but my consideration of acceptable isn't what I need, because that wouldn't make me happy. That would make me feel selfish and miserable. As much as streaming is my favorite thing in the world to do, because we all have bad days. I'm naturally an introverted person. I can be quite anxious sometimes. Streaming, and the way I've tried to make my stream, and I've had people message me and say, your stream feels like home. And it makes me want to cry when I think about it, because that's what I want it to be. It's a big sofa, I have the controller, but we're all just chilling and hanging out together. And that's how it feels every time. I turn up, I'm the Gwent streamer that sits in front of Gwent and doesn't actually stream Gwent. Because I have a Just Chatting section every morning where people turn up just for that, right?
Yes.
And it's just that I get to see and talk to all of my friends, and it's amazing. And whether there's one person in there or there's a couple of hundred people in there, it just feels like I'm hanging out with my friends. And even when I've had an awful day, I'll turn up and someone will rip me to pieces for various things that have happened on the stream, or I'll get to see friends pop in the chat that just make an effort to be there, and they're like, oh my god, thank you for streaming through COVID and keeping me company, or I'm like, seriously, thank you for keeping me company. It works
Mm-hmm.
both ways. I'm just the one you can see, but you being there, whether you're washing up and just listening to me and lurking, or you're doing whatever, it's exactly the same thing the other way. It's a mutual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, some of my favorite people that I've met, I've never met, which is wild when I think about it, because I see these people. I don't see them. I talk to these people every day. Like I met Tia through streaming.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many amazing friends. Like my moderator, Bassaside, one of the coolest humans I have ever met. Like I couldn't be a streamer without him. Like no messing around. I could not do it anymore. I don't know how I would function without him. Like if I morning stream, I am useless because he's from America. So many cool friends. All the people I've met on Team Aretusa, loads of other Gwent people. It just brings me real joy.
That's incredible. No, I feel like that showcases the power of streaming, but also that's got to be. I'm glad you have no regrets, but man, talk about noble, right? You love streaming, and you could do it full time, but it's not enough to accomplish all your goals. So, man, let's talk about like a perfect person to be a streamer, but also just like a great person. Hold on.
I just do what I hope do unto others as you want to be done to you. If I'm in trouble and I need help, I would hope that the people around me who like me, love me, whatever, would help me. As a result, if the people around me that I like, love, know, even need help, I should probably help them, right? Like, if I just focus on me, I'm going to be really, really alone. And that's not
true.
fun.
No, it's not. It's not fun being alone. Even as an introvert as well, you need some social connections. You need some of that, whether it's coming from IRL friends or also the friends you make that you might never meet in your stream, saying hello every day, being there for you. The beautiful thing. That is, wow, that's all incredible. So you start working for Royal Mail at this point.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me a little bit? You seem to really like it. Even though you say let me elaborate. You like the potential where it's going. At least that's why you signed up.
Yeah.
You like the paycheck. But then, given that the head nod was there, you did mention early on that it was really boring. It's about as interesting as your current job sounds. So tell me a bit about. I guess let me change my question in terms of whether you enjoy it. Do you have optimism that you'll enjoy it in the long run, or is it right now you view it as something you kind of want to use as a stepping stone to more interesting things?
It's an interesting question, because when I say you should enjoy your job, I don't mean you should skip in every day going, woohoo, this is my purpose, this is why I live. No. But people are like, what's your dream job? I do not dream of labor. I dream of joy. But you should be able to take joy out of what you do. I feel like I'm good at what I do. If I work well under pressure, which is weird for someone who's anxious, but it just kind of switches off, and I go into a different me effectively when I have to be at work, and I enjoy the pressure and I thrive under that pressure. So when I joined Royal Mail, the pitch they gave me was, we need to change. We are a massive company. It's like trying to steer a cruise ship through a canal, but we cannot turn quick enough. We cannot pivot. Our change curve should be here, and we are here. Like, we need new people. We need brains from like the real world to come and help us. So whenever somewhere is on fire, effectively, I go in, because Royal Mail's culture is old-fashioned X-style military management. It is a heavily unionized business where management and the staff are against each other, or at least that's how it was. You were seen as the problem. Now, that's not how I work. I walk in day one and go, we are a team. You have a role, I have a role. My role is no more important than your role. We just do different things. If I'm trying to do your job, I'm not doing my job. If I'm not doing my job, you guys don't get what you need. I will fight for you. I will battle for you. I will defend you from the world as long as you give me the same. And that was very weird for Royal Mail staff, because they looked at me and were like, what's the catch? What do you want? Why are you lying to us? Like, no, I'm not Royal Mail. And it's something that anybody who joins Royal Mail will say, I am not Royal Mail. I work for Royal Mail. I am here to not be Royal Mail. That's why I'm here. to help it get better, to become more inclusive, to work well, to actually go forward. So Royal Mail gives me something that streaming doesn't give me. It gives me constant, brand new, crazy challenges that just shouldn't be there. And yet you will get a phone call at 4 a.m. and whatever the problem is, this has gone completely wrong. Help. Okay, I now have to fix this. I have to deal with this. And I find that really interesting. And I love that challenge. I love the opportunity to go somewhere that, you don't want to go there, lad. No, that's not fixed. Oh, avoid that town. Don't go and run that county. I'm like, I want to go there. Send me there. Let me see why you think this is wrong. And I promise you, you will probably find out it isn't the staff, it was the old management. I promise you. Trust me, like, it just doesn't work that way. You will always have 10% of your people giving you 90% of your problems. But it can be really interesting. Like, if I could full-time stream, I would. I'll be honest, because it brings me both. It brings me joy, it brings me happiness. I love doing it in every way. And it's that it constantly does feed that as you experience new things. I get to work for CDPR, which is amazing. I get to communicate with them all the time. I get to grow my community. We get to try new things. It's the dream. But I would miss the other side if I'm ever lucky enough to be able to full-time stream and cover everything I need to. I would miss the occasional, Matt, we need you. This needs to happen. Here is a new challenge. Please go and deal with this or fix this or create this because it doesn't exist and we don't know how to fix it. Like, yeah. So when I say you should enjoy what you do, I don't mean fairy tale world where everyone skips into but you should be able to take satisfaction from what you do, because if you hate what you do, you spend too much of your time there to be a happy person and hate what you do. For me, I couldn't do that.
I would agree. I think not everyone can get the fairy tale ending. I skip the joy, skip the work every day, enjoy it. But you do want to have some joy or satisfaction, something that keeps you saying, at least there's some good moments during this job. And even, I think even for like the sexiest job in the world, which is entrepreneurship, whether you're streaming, whether you're starting your own company, you hear the stories of the most successful ones and they all hated some part of their job. It's paradoxical, right? Now, I will say usually it's the accounting aspect of it, because some people who are creatives and start a creative business hate the books, or vice versa, where these very people who love the numbers and all that are now struggling to get interesting advertisements made. And you start out, you don't have a ton of money. But what I'm trying to say is that the fairy tale jobs typically don't exist. There's always going to be a negative. But likewise, you should try to find a job can be all negative. You should try to find a job that has a bit of both. Whether it's your dream job, it'll have both. Whether it's just a job, your corporation that gives you interesting challenges, some satisfaction, great. But there are jobs out there that are truly just always awful. And if you're going to spend at least 40 hours a week every week for 40 years, you probably need a different job.
Completely, yeah, and that's fine. There's even if the thing you take satisfaction out of isn't anything to do with the job, but this allows me to support my family and my lifestyle. If that's what you take out of it, that's great, and that's completely fine. I've always been so envious of people, and I knew people who were at 14 years old. They were like, "I am going to be this."
Oh,
I'm 33, and I have no idea what I'm going to be.
Feel that pain.
I'm just going to be a person today, a person tomorrow, and see what turns up. I will do the next right thing. I'm so jealous of these people who have this burning passion to be whatever. I'm jealous of religious people. I'm not religious, but it must bring such peace and comfort. But 100%. I know I'll never feel that because it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
But the people who are, I find it incredible, and I find it fascinating, and I find it I'm envious of that comfort that they must have, right? I'm never going to have it, and I'm not looking for it. But there's a positive in it.
Yes, I completely agree. That sense of shared path from an early age and walking it, or even if you find it in college and go. Because when I graduated with international relations, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know it. It's the degree that applies to everything yet nothing. And then I ended up in a startup that did medical education software. Then I ended up in finance.
Okay.
Then I ended up quitting my job and trying to do some my own different ideas. Like there's no path. It's beautiful, but I also have friends that were like, I'm gonna be an engineer. Turns out I like civil engineering. Great, I'm gonna become a civil engineer. Period. Done. And they go off and be really happy. And I'm like, come on. Why is it so
How
easy?
is that? Yeah. Why did I not draw those cards? I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah,
I don't even know what I want for breakfast.
Yeah, you wake up and you're like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do and find a bunch of joy. And I'm like, God, I'm sure in like 5 years, I wish I could tell you what my industry is and what exactly I'm doing. Do I hope they keep full-time streaming and build out a lot more? Because I have ambitions to be bigger than that. Yes. Am I going to do it? Heck if I know. We're just going to try.
Yeah. That is future problem. I can only deal with today. I can plan for tomorrow, but I can only live today.
Exactly. You only ever existing in the present at any time. Gotta make the most of it.
True.
Excellent. All right, let me go back to your history here. Okay. So now, what year did you join Royal Mailing? Because I know we're about to hit 2019, probably pretty soon.
So I joined Royal Mail in 2016.
Okay.
I had a very different life in 2016. So obviously the new challenge was really important and really exciting for me. The other aspect of it was I always want to keep doing better. I always expect more of myself, whether that's in terms of role, in terms of what I'm doing, in terms of financial side. I rate myself highly, and I believe my time is worth more as I become more experienced, because that's just how I am. Confident, arrogant, call it what you want. I believe in myself. I believe in what I offer or what I bring to the table. Like whenever I talk to friends and they ask me for advice on interviews and stuff like that, my first piece of advice is if you've got an interview, the job is already yours. Because you wouldn't be in that room if they didn't think you could do it. So it is as much about them selling you the company as you selling you them. Don't go in and be an arse, but at the same time, ask people things. Be aware of your worth. It's completely fine to ask questions. But I moved in 2016, and the extra money was going to be very helpful, not just because I could continue to support my family. I just bought a house. I was engaged at the time, so I got a wedding to plan and pay for.
Okay.
All of that partially influenced my decision for sure.
Interesting. Okay.
And then 2019 hit.
Yeah, we can jump forward a little bit. I know you're flirting a little bit with streaming in 2018, but let's jump forward to 2019 because I feel like it's this doomsday year.
So it was.
Tell me about the tragedy and craziness that would eventually still lead you down a path you like. But, happy ending here. But tell me about 2019.
Yeah. So, you briefly met, I streamed briefly in 2018 because I met some friends who were streamers who encouraged me to do it. I only did very briefly because, at the time I was working 60 hours a week. I was trying to homeschool my brother, and streaming I didn't have time for it. Right? It wasn't a thing. So I stopped streaming. And then 2019 hit. Long story short, in October 2019, I was getting married. Everything was set, everything was ready, everything was booked. Wedding, honeymoons, the whole shebang. We'd been together 8 years, loved her very dearly. I came home from work on a Saturday in June of 2018, and she was sat on the edge of our bed and said, I've changed my mind. I don't want children. I know you do. The end. And my entire world imploded in about 30 seconds. My whole life, we were the invitations were out, the honeymoons were booked. I'm still paying for them now. But here's the thing. I loved her with all of my heart and soul. But I've got a big family. I've always come from a big family, and not being able to have children wouldn't be the same as not wanting children. It's something we'd always discussed. It's something she'd always wanted. I'd always wanted. She changed her mind. And I love her infinitely for having the balls, for want of a better word, to tell me. Because most people wouldn't have. And as demolishing as that was, it was the right decision. Because ultimately, she would either have made herself miserable for the sake of me, or eventually it would have imploded anyway. So, my whole life kind of jumped off a cliff. But I'm still grateful she made the decision. My life would be completely different right now. I wouldn't have streamed. I'd be married. I'd probably have children based on how long we would have been married, which is still exactly what I want. I can't imagine not having kids. If it doesn't happen, then fine. But I can't contemplate a world where I don't. I just can't. I love my nieces and nephews to pieces. Watching them learn how the world works it brings me more joy than anything I can contemplate. I can't explain to you how much joy it brings me. So one day I hope I have that. But the fact that she had the fact that she was willing to tell me And, you know, yeah. So my life fell off a cliff. And I didn't really know what to do with myself. And I had all of this free time all of a sudden because my brother had finished his like studies because we got him through his GCSEs and stuff, which was amazing. And then all of a sudden I had no partner here in an evening, and I was like, well, what do I do now? I know, I'm gonna play some Gwent.
Okay. Well, you know what? That's not a bad thing. I think people first. I think that is quite the story in terms of you go from having basically being with someone for 8 years and then wedding him. You're right before this all and the next step, and then it's like.
Yeah.
It disappears. And you're right. If there was a marriage, it probably would have ended well for one or both people. Like, you don't want to be with someone who's perpetually going to be unhappy because of kids, and that would be a bad end. But this end also sucks too. No discount there. So I agree with you. It still sucks all around. But you feel the time. I think it's really important, and you have an extreme example here, obviously. Some people just break up with a girl or get dumped by a girlfriend, boyfriend, their partner. And it's so important to just find some activity that's you based that focuses on you that you'd like to do and just fill it quickly. And that's how you get through some of the tougher times. And you found that in streaming Gwent.
I did. I mean, it was a bit of a weird time because once that happened, so obviously that happened in the June. By the time July rolled round, it was effectively we'd made the decision, that was it, everything was cancelled. I also then needed knee surgery, which was a little bit difficult. And so I had the knee surgery the following year in the very beginning of February. And then there was a global pandemic. You guys have probably heard that it happened and is happening. And I was stuck in this house on my own with what ended up being botched knee surgery. So I couldn't move for nearly 4 months. I was basically trapped in this house. The pandemic hit, so nobody could come round. You couldn't order food because everybody was ordering online. It was bizarre. If I hadn't been streaming, I don't know how I'd have coped. I don't know how I would have survived without the people who are in my community that I get to talk to who kept me sane, genuinely kept me sane. And if I'd made the decision not to start streaming again, I don't know what I would have done. I would be a very unhealthy, very, very different person without the friends I met through Twitch. 100%.
Well, I'm glad you found that outlet because, yes, during rates on all kinds of negative outcomes were not good during COVID. Not just because of the getting sick or hospitals being overstaffed, or not overstaffed, but overwhelmed and lacking in resources, but also humans are social. Even introverts need to interact with people. And being trapped in your house all day, every day, essentially alone, is brutal. And is not something that people were meant to do. Do we have to do it because of a disease? Yes. Were people wired biologically to do this? No, not at all. But you found your outlet, though, and that is streaming. Kind of like a 2-for-1. It helped fill your time, which was good after everything exploded at the end of 2019. And likewise, that would also give you this outlet, this social outlet to interact with people you've never met. But there is something super social about streaming, right? It's very different, as we joked about before this interview really began. We joked about how, you might not, or maybe not even before the interview. Let me use a different example in the interview, which is some of your best friends, people you love and adore, you've never met. And that these social relations are really real. If you didn't want to interact with people, this is what we joked about before the interview, you can make YouTube videos. But if you're going to live stream, it's all about that community, all about that interaction.
For me, it really is, yeah.
And
some of the biggest streamers on Twitch go down the audience route instead. People like Asmogolds or whoever. Some of the most successful streamers, they have an audience.
Yes.
And they have a character, and that's cool and it's incredible. I would say it's much easier to be a streamer doing it that way because you have light touch moderation and you just do your thing and everything else doesn't matter. That's not how I want to stream.
Yes.
I want the interaction. I want the conversation, the joy, that backwards and forwards. Like I get ripped to shreds constantly for the stupid things I've done on stream over the years. I don't understand how I've ended up in those situations, but it's
Yeah,
part of the fun.
part of it.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about it. It really is. And yeah, the interaction side of it was amazing. I love Gwent. I've been
Mm-hmm.
playing Gwent since closed beta. I am a huge and staunch defender of Gwent. I can
Mm-hmm.
also be one of Gwent's biggest critics at times,
Yes,
but that comes from a place of love, not from Reddit re.
I agree.
Um, so, but yeah,
Important.
so the community there, it was already filled with people that I kind of knew and loved. But yeah, the Twitch, I didn't expect Twitch to go well. Like when I streamed the first time, I had 100 followers after streaming for 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd streamed to one or two people.
Yes.
And I came back and it somehow just didn't stop growing.
Yeah, no, it really. I was looking at your numbers, and the first like year you're floating up streaming, your best monthly average was like 6 viewers. You come back, it's like 1 month happens, you start on a single digits, two, you get the double, and three, just all the way up. Have a lot of respect for it, and it worked. And to be
And
honest, you deserve it. You're a charming individual, and you definitely have a lot. You're well spoken, have a lot to share. You can see why you took off. Deserve it.
it's just fun.
Yeah.
Just have fun. I'm only good at being me. I'm awful at being anybody else. So I'll just keep being me.
You know what? And that strategy is working. So how did you have this successful stream going on? How did you get involved with CDPR's casting?
So that's I've been talking backwards and forwards with CDPR for a while because I can be quite a pest at times. I was part of a podcast called The Merchants of Novigrad for a little while. Myself, Tia Beastie, Weisenberg, Baby Yosus, and Villa as well. And we'd interviewed a few people from CDPR. We interviewed Jason, and he's awesome. He's just got this energy and joy about what he does. And as soon as I was a part of that interview, I knew Gwent was going in a great long-term direction.
Okay.
Because the guy, not only does he know his stuff, not only does he care, he actually loves what he creates, and it matters. And it just made me think, okay, this is going to be what I always wanted it to be. But after that interview, we chatted backwards and forwards, on and off, about Gwent and what was coming up and various other things. And Tia and I did a little bit of community casting. I also had cast with Spessy as well, doing some community events. And then I think it was the end of October, early November in 2020. Vlad he contacted me, Thor, and he was like, "Hey, Lionhart, would you be interested in joining the casting team for season 3?" And this was like McBeard hadn't left Gwent yet, hadn't stopped being a caster yet, and I fell off my chair. I was like, "Oh my god!" So he interviewed me, and we chatted backwards and forwards. He asked, so you've said you want to be involved. Tell us about your casting experience. Yada yada yada. And then, is there anyone else you think we should interview? Who else do you think should join the casting team? Not to replace the current casters, although some of them may be moving on, we don't know. But who do you think we should interview? I gave them 3 names, and all 3 of them have done casting work with CDPR since, which is really cool. And it was nice to see, because we've had loads of different casters, loads of different hosts, and they're all incredible in their own way. But some of them have moved on, some of them have stayed, some of them have left Gwent altogether and then sort of taken a step back. And when we got, particularly when the esports was paused because of COVID initially and they hadn't quite worked out how to do online yet, it became more apparent that Gwent had changed quite a lot as through that period, and that they wanted to try and add some new faces for the newer big people that had sort of arrived, if that makes sense. And yeah, that was basically how it happened. And yeah, I've never looked back.
That's incredible. And you continue to do it to this day quite successfully. You're quite beloved by the community. That is a solid story. I've always given the CDPR, one thing I think they do really well with esports is every person they've hired these days is pretty much strictly from the community. It is.
Yes, I love that.
I think it's so cool. It's not just like a random nameless contractor cast at some sporting event, they bring it in. It's like, no, this is a person who constantly streams, who the community knows. They create content on their own time for this game. Let's bring them in. You already know him. You already know love him or her. Bring him in. Do it. Which I think is one of the raddest things. I just think it's so cool. I wish more esports did that.
I really appreciate that style as well, and I think Gwent is far more complicated than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't just put Gwent down today and then come back for the next. I couldn't do it because the nuance of how the new cards, the new interactions, and the highest level of Gwent is so good.
Yep.
That like when Coleman won World Masters 1, in an entire weekend, he missed 3 points of like in every game he played, he missed 3 potential points in total. That is wild. That is like most players miss 20 a game from different lines they could have taken. And you watch other people like Pireball, who is he is so damn good at this game. It's not even fair at this point. Like his progress and watching him, he's also an incredibly great guy, by the way. Every time I've spoken to him, he's always been incredibly generous with his time, really friendly. But anyway, so yeah, love Pireball. But the level at which these guys play, and particularly when they have to go slightly bizarre lines because they actually end up being more economically point-wise. It's weird because you don't have to be as good as them because otherwise there wouldn't be casters, but you have to kind of know what they're thinking when they hint at it, and it's so much harder than it used to be. Like, oh my god. Like, every time I cast, the game is more complex, and I do more and more and more.
I think it's so fascinating. Also, paradoxically, like the Coleman example, they missed 3 points in tournament. But he's also the world champion. He is the best of the best. And they still make mistakes, right? I find that to be fascinating. And then, like, knowing the individual matchups. Like, one of the things, really simple example that I really love is in a Siege versus Siege matchup, you want to, whoever wins round 1 wins the game. Because whoever plays, even if you're down a card, if you play Siege first, round 2, you win. You get your engines up faster, you kill all their engines, and you win. And if you are sitting there with, like, a basic level of Gwent, like, oh, last say is everything, you might not know that, oh, if I just play Siege, I win. And then you go higher and higher level, and all of a sudden you start seeing really weird deck creations that are trying to meta the meta, and then, it's just, there's
the
so
last open
much.
is exactly that. Pireball's gift in Gwent isn't just that he's good at Gwent, it's that he's one of the best at reading the meta to know what to target and what to ban.
Yes,
he is so good at that, and I'm sure it's not just on his own. I'm sure he's got a team. You know, he's on TLG, and there are some great people there who I'm sure are involved in that. But ultimately, when he does it, like in the Open, we just cast. He won the last Open. He targeted Engine Scoia'tael with an intention to ban monsters because he knew if he targets Engine Scoia'tael, he can also be reasonably good into Syndicate, even though Syndicate is obviously crazy good. And there were multiple times when he couldn't quite get over the line against the Syndicate matchup, but either way, he would be stronger into that. He took a Nilfgaard list that I looked at and went, I don't like this in the Nilfgaard mirror, and I chatted to him about it, and he went, I win the Nilfgaard mirror every time. Trust me. And I was like, I do trust you. And then he explained how, and he performed it perfectly. He explained the way he would play that mirror, card for card, and then did it in the final.
Wow.
And I was sat there watching it going, holy crap, this guy is insane. Like, it isn't just, he draws his cards, he wins his games. He described to me how he would play that matchup, basically card for card. And it was wild watching it, because I felt like I was watching from the future or something. I was like, there's no way he knows this that well, but he does.
Yeah, I think the Gwent esports, it's almost the playing. It's so ironic that playing is in many ways like just like a third, if even that, of how the game is done. So one of my earlier interviews was with Freddie Babes, and I didn't realize until I chatted with him.
I love Freddie.
Oh, he's so good.
He's a really good guy as well. But he's
phenomenal.
A really unique kind of Gwent player that is so damn good for Gwent. He really is. If it was anyone but Freddie against Coleman in that final, I'd have been like, let's go, Freddie, because the UK League. But carry.
No, you're good. You're good. I was biased towards Freddie. He was one of the first creators that got me into Gwent. I don't think once I was in Gwent, it didn't get me into it, but one of the early ones I really liked back in the day when like Merchant was another creator that I enjoyed. Throwbacks to closed beta. Anywho, when he explained to me that when the tournament decks are announced, they already know, he can already tell what's his chances of winning this tournament. He can already look at somebody and say, you're out, you're going to advance one round, you're probably going to be in the finals, and have reasonable certainty that that's going to be the way. One or two people will break the norm, But many matches will just look and say, well, this person targeted, like, the obvious example is life coach targeted Swarm. He got opponent playing a lot of Swarm.
And he found it.
He found it, he wins. Even though he comes back and just plays for 2 months, he says, look, I'm going to target Swarm. I think everyone's going Swarm. And he knocked out a player. It was he knocked out Tailbot. Was it, if the memory serves right?
Yeah, Tailbot,
and
yeah,
then,
one of the greatest players of all time. Yeah.
Exactly.
And Tailbot himself said, as soon as he'd seen his list, he said, I've got less than 10% chance of winning this.
Yep.
Because a player, even back for 2 months at that level, his lists are so favoured into mine, I should not be able to win this.
Yep, and got crushed. And that is incredible. And then not factoring that the moment the lists are announced, you have you yourself and then every other person you're working with, because these people behind the scenes work in teams like Specimen Gwent, Special Freddy Babes prepare for Masters.
He did.
And they start scrimming all the lists. They scrim all the possibilities because they're trying to say these like 5 lines of play are really important. Do not take this line of play. It's a trap. You got to be careful. They play this card. You've already lost the round. You need to get out as fast as you can on the lowest amount of provision spent.
Yeah, this is the line to take. Yeah,
exactly. And they have like a week. You announce the list and you're like, go, 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 go. And then
well, they don't even have that a lot of the time. Before an open, the casters, we will see the lists early, but the players, they submit them on, say, a Monday. The open is on the Saturday. They will get them 9 a.m. Friday in a lot of instances. So they'll know roughly what's coming, but they won't. Like the last 24 hours before an open are huge for those players. But we sit in on the scrims a lot of the time. We'll sit and watch them doing it. Like we contact all the players who are playing before. We ask them questions about their lineups and how they're feeling and all of that stuff. And they're every single time. I've never had anybody be anything other than incredibly welcoming. Doesn't matter what. Like I'm from TA.
Yep.
Message Fireball, message Freddy, and they're like, yep, no problem. Let's sit and have a chat. If we want to sit in and watch them scrim, fantastic, because there's a trust there that we're there to cast. We're not going to share that information because why would we? And it's incredible how great that is and how open that is. And getting to watch those scrims, it's a whole different game. It is still Gwent, but it's not the Gwent I play.
Right.
Like, it's just so good.
Yes, and I wish people could appreciate that. I wish there was an easier way to show that because, like, to do the work, most of it's behind the scenes. Most of it, the actual gameplay, your best of 5, is not the core of the Gwent esport. It's this insane behind-the-scene prep, this rush, and then you get there, and then you just hope your player is gonna miss, or whoever's, or not even your player. I guess if on team level, be your player, but whoever's playing is sitting there saying, "I hope I don't miss more than like 5-6 points in these games." And then you go.
You do all the prep time to make sure that you don't. You go, well, what is the most effective line? You've got some players who are just naturally, intuitively able to do that. Like Shinmiri is a gift. He can watch something and analyze it like that, and he doesn't. A lot of the time, he doesn't even have to. Like, I would absorb it, I would think about it, I would comprehend, and then I would answer, and then 20 seconds have passed. It's an instantaneous thing for someone like Shin. And whether it's him streaming or he's casting or he's being an analyst, it's so good to watch someone like that. And the players at the very top end are also very capable of doing that. And like Life Coach, he always talks about things in terms of number of stats. I don't care what the card does. I don't care what the combo is. What is the highest number of stats I can make every single turn? But I'm not playing this turn. It's like chess. I'm playing 5 turns from now. Because if I do this, you'll do this. Then I do this, then you could do this or this or this. In which case I do this or this or this. It's so much more than just, the boost and damage game as it used to be.
Yes, no, it is. Gwent has become much more complex over time, and I really like it. I am envious still of how closed beta, the 3 rows, how unbelievably chaotic and weird it was. It was beautiful. And then Homecoming came. In my opinion, they're just doing it for the mobile to get it to 2 rows, make it a little easier to come into the game, and also,
it's a big factor.
These
it was a big factor.
But then I've noticed more and more, it's getting more and more complex. The cards are getting weirder and weirder. They're more and more willing to break rules again. And we're moving in a direction that excites me on a level. And it's only, like, the esports scene should only get more complicated. It should only be more intense. And I think that, I hope so, right? Where I feel like the low point was the mid-season update, or midwinter update. The one that really simplified all the leader abilities. I hated that moment. But then we go up to today. It's Syndicate right now. Syndicate's getting Line Pockets, Jackpot, Pirate's Cove. Those are weirder abilities. You get Pincer Maneuver for Northern Realms and Stockpile. Those are actually weirder abilities. We're going back to the weirdness. Now, if monsters can get some love, I'd be grateful. But I'm excited about the direction, and I'm very optimistic about the future of Gwent because of all of that. And I hope the esports also continues to grow greatly because it is excellent. And I hope there's ways for players to appreciate the behind the scenes aspects of it. Because I feel like that's always, for me, the lost part.
Yeah, it is a big part of it. It doesn't happen. It's not luck. It's not chance. Those players are there because they put the work in. Yes, they are good at Gwent because they wouldn't be there otherwise. But yeah, like you say, there is a lot more to it than just I'll turn up and I'll throw some decks in and I'll be fine. Like every little decision matters, and they put in a lot of effort. These players really do work. Their teams behind the scenes supporting them. They really do a lot of work to try and get to where they are, and it's really admirable. It really is, and I'm certainly hopeful for Gwent esports as well. It's the fact that the journey existing is how season 3 exists effectively. Gwent went from initially season 1 where it was just Witcher money, have lots of Witcher money, to okay, you actually need to sustain yourself and actually exist and be viable. Well, no leader decoupling, no journey, no journey. No money, no Gwent long-term support mode. Bye.
Yeah.
And I love the balance, the way that content is presented. We're in a weird moment because we've changed the way that expansion cycles exist so that we get more frequent content, but we're still learning how that works, and it's having a difficult effect on the meta at the moment, and it certainly has done. But that's kind of an inevitability of learning a new way of releasing stuff.
I agree.
Because we don't get, here's 70 cards and we'll tweak them. We get 26, and inevitably, faction Monsters is going to do really well now. Like Scoia'tael 6 weeks ago was bin tier, unplayable. Oh my god, why do they hate Scoia'tael? Now it's hard targeted and the most banned thing you can find.
Yeah.
So, at the moment, Northern Realms and Skellige. Awful, terrible, unplayable. We have an expansion in 5 weeks with a bunch of new cards. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably going to be fine. But it's just getting used to how that works, not just for us, but for them as well. For the team at CDPR to work out how to mitigate the new issues that they're facing now that we're doing it differently. But I believe they will, because from every interaction I've ever had with the team, they love it, they love the game, they care about the game, they play the game, and they wanted to succeed. And that's what it comes down to. They wanted to succeed as much as any of us do.
I completely agree. I could not have said it better myself. I think CDPR, the Gwent team, has shown that they are passionate about this game. They're moving in interesting directions. I personally love the mini expansions because I create a lot of content for Gwent and play a lot of Gwent. So changing it up every 2 months is perfect for me. Are they making mistakes? Sure. Was Sunset Wanderer, the mid card between the expansions, 2 provisions too short? Yes. Was the initial Relics package, or the Relic packages, keep being a little strong? Sure. But then we see Scoia'tael, boom, Elven Seer, Orb, Simless, coming in, Sorceress.
Some really cool new designs, right? It fundamentally changes how you play the entire faction, and so much more is possible. Like Orb of Insight is such a cool card. And until
I thought it was
got their hands
terrible
on
then.
I genuinely, because I looked at the cards and I was aware of how good they were going to be, but Scoia'tael can be hard to judge, and cards like that are hard to judge until you play them and realize, oh my god, that actually makes this possible and this possible and this possible, and you compare that with that. And I think some of the card I have the biggest problem with is actually the Dolblathana, the 3-point engine.
Whisper? Yeah.
That for me is the most broken card in Gwent, because the variance is too big. And then cards like that lead to a much narrower meta, because if you don't have an answer, even as monsters, which we can probably all agree is a little bit strong right now, you just lose a long round to a 5 provision card. It's crazy. But these are mistakes that we make while we're trying to do new cool crazy things, and that's fine, because we learn and we evolve, and then we do something different and we keep getting better. New content in Gwent all the time can only be a good thing for me.
Agreed.
Anyway. So, like you said, as a content creator, we have a month of, oh, cool, new cards. Then a month of, oh my god, hype for the next set of new cards.
Yep.
And, we've still got draft mode to actually be finished, which is hopefully this year. Whatever the hell Project Golden Necker is that they teased us with and we're still waiting for, that could be something entirely wild and off the wall, whatever it is. And then expansions every 2 months.
Yes.
That's incredible. That's so much content for a free game.
Yes, free game and inexpensive one. I remember one time I convinced my friend to put $50 in a brand new account, put $50, bought the kegs for one of the factions, and by the end of like 3 days of playing, he pretty much had a tier 1 or tier 2 deck for monsters made. I looked at that, I'm like, all right, that is generous as can be. Collection's already underway, and you don't have to have fun of Gwent. You don't have to go to pro rank. You can just go play your cards. It's a genuinely fun game with complexity and layers, and it's an excellent time.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I love the direction. I'm really optimistic about the future. I was really nervous for a time when they didn't announce a roadmap, but now seeing where we're at, holy cow, do I feel good about it. I feel so good about it.
Yeah, and I'm genuinely excited. I know the meta right now is a little rigid, but I firmly believe that metas change. They always do.
Monthly.
We are a few months progressed from the best meta, in my opinion, that Gwent has ever had. So yeah, there's just so much to be excited about, so much potentially coming. And I know there's this little bit of worry at the moment because the whole world of Gwent is playing Storybook Brawl, for instance, because I know it's a topic that's been discussed in lots of places.
People complain about that in my chat all the time.
So, but people look at it and think it's, oh god, Gwent streamers are leaving the game to play Storybook Brawl. They could not be more different. And like Gwent, we all play a lot of Gwent. Though I'm still playing hours and hours and hours and hours of Gwent, as are most of those people. And when the meta shifts 5 days from now, guess what? They're going to be playing Gwent again. It's fine.
It's going to be, perfectly fine. People get burnt out. I don't think the Storybook Brawl pivot is just, I don't think it's a matter of everyone's leaving Gwent. It's a matter of, this is a meta that there are 4 or 5 decks that are competitive for roughly 4 factions, and that's what you've got. And they're a little tired of it. It's also a really annoying meta in terms of everyone needs removal. So whatever scheme you want to do, it's I slam something, kill something in yours, you slam something, kill. If you can't kill Whisperer, you're probably going to lose. If you can't interactive self-feed, you're probably going to lose. It's a bit of a back and forth. When Tunnel Drill comes down, wipes your board, you're like, okay, finally got that.
It's a little predictable, right? And it becomes less fun.
Yes, I agree. And it's not, you don't need randomness in terms of like, Sorceress makes a random card. You randomness you're looking for is they're playing Scoia'tael. Their leader ability is this. They could have 2 like finishers in that deck. Let's see what they've got.
It could be this, And
that's when it's fun.
Like the variance, and it will come back because ultimately, I know for a fact the devs are aware of this. Obviously, one of the things we talk about with them is, this is the first tournament where we've had 4 factions and 5 leader abilities. Kind of like that's not 6 leader abilities. Sorry.
Yeah.
But that's really, 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 really narrow as a meta, and CCGs are built around a diverse meta.
Correct.
But they know this.
Yeah.
They're not looking at that and going, "Phew, we only have to build those." They're looking at it going, "Cool. How do we mix that up?
Yep.
How do we make this more exciting, but also more varied?" They're not just sitting on their hands going, "Meh." They're looking at it and they're going, "Okay, cool, let's do this.
Agreed.
Let's keep going. Let's make the next good thing. Let's work out what people didn't like." They constantly listen to community feedback. Honest, they never stop. They are looking at everything that is spoken about, whether it's in streams or on Twitter and Reddit as well, and they're going, "Okay, some of it is just noise, and that's fine." And they don't take everything directly because you can't. But when there are cogent arguments, they listen to that stuff. And I know for a fact they do, and I know it's stuff that they're talking about and they're considering and they're trying to work out, okay, how do we progress? Because that's what they want to do.
I completely agree. I have nothing but full faith in CDPR. They've shown me time and time again they can get us to a good meta. And people forget about how bad the Lippy Vi meta was. I still think Vi is by far the worst design card in Gwent, and it's not close. But I mean, it's a card that demands there's no creativity in building a Vi deck. You just want to eat it as many times as possible. If you say, I'm going to eat it 5 times, well, the 6th one's even better than the first 5. Why would you not go for 6? I have an endless grudge against that card because it offers 0 creativity. It's a deck archetype into itself. At least Lippy offers some creativity. But
I agree. Yeah, Lippy is unique at least.
Yeah, I can play a Queen's Guard deck, but I can also run like a deck that's trying to generate a bunch of gold cards of Master Mir and shove it back in my deck. That's a meme deck. It's a fun one though. But Vi is the same thing every game.
It opens a whole line of play on its own, and you can change the whole way you build a deck is different for that kind of. Now I don't like playing against it necessarily, but you have to play against it completely differently. And I completely agree. Anything that makes the game more binary for me is a bad thing.
Agreed.
If it's answer or lose, I just want to Alt F4. If that's I played through the Imlerith Sabbath metas where it literally was Gwent was a 30-second game because you queued in and you either were Imlerith Sabbath and drew it, and if you didn't, you just escape entered, or you played your Imlerith Sabbath and your opponent either answered it or they escape entered, and that was the game. That was the game for a month, and it was. We've had these awful metas are a weird and difficult thing, and partly yes, we do shape them, but obviously we shape them with the tools we have. This is not the first difficult meta we've had. It won't be the last, but we've also had some incredible ones, so it'll be fine.
Yes, I think it'll be fine as well. I'm optimistic in that CDPR, especially with the new model, they're only going to get better learning about it. I think it's part of the uncertainty, as you mentioned earlier, where, hey, how do you swing this and that? How do I balance this card and that card? And, like, that's okay. They're learning. I think, honestly, right now my only complaint is the mid-patch updates between the new cards. It's like a 2-month cycle. They're honestly not heavy-handed enough, in my opinion. They're being too light, but
yeah,
they're learning.
I mean, there's. I know some of them were kind of, or prospective ones were leaked in the deck builder, but that also isn't the full extent of what's expected to change either.
Correct.
So
we'll see.
There's definitely more to come than has been uncovered. So and it depends. I'm a fan of, like, when we had the 6-month expansion cycle, I wanted the devs to give us that, and I wanted them to go away for a good period of time. I prefer when metas evolve, but the problem is a meta can't evolve when it's at the binary point we're at, because there isn't a counter to this card needs answering or you lose the game.
Correct.
The only counter to that is I have to include this, so now I can't play any of this. So that's when I want intervention. I want things to be pulled slightly back into line. And people say a provision change isn't going to do enough. And yet it always does. Because all of a sudden it's slightly more expensive, or it is slightly more difficult to pull off, or I now have extra space for X, Y, Z. Like Sunset Wanderers, I hate that card. That's wrong. I love the concept and I love the design of the card. It came in and it ruined Gwent for me for a month because every deck was mid-range Sunset Wanderers. It bored 100%. Me to tears. On the flip side to that, I was adamant that not fundamentally reworking that card would just mean it stayed. They gave it a 2 provision nerf, and I was like, nope, ridiculous, this is not going to be enough. And now you only see it in the list that it makes sense in, and I was completely wrong.
Yes, I think...
I had the conversation with Malegian about it, and I was like, Malegian, it's going to be in every deck. There is no reason you won't still run it. And he was like, look, we're going to do this first. If you're right, maybe it'll get changed again. He was right. I was wrong, completely, 100%.
Yes, I think...
It made a difference.
Yeah, I feel that one thing that's lost in the Gwent community is the power of numbers relative to what they actually do. So, for example, I can bounce Tunnel Drill. I can make Tunnel Drill the worst card in the game. Make it 11 provision. 0 people play it immediately.
It's dead.
And
it's dead. The card.
So the question when it comes to design is a different thing than power. Mamuna right now, for example, is taking off everybody, but the design of the card is kind of cool. It rewards me for getting a powerful bronze unit into the grave, and Monsters has a bunch of them. And most powerful is Archgriffin, which is a complicated one to get. And you might want to run Larva or Arachaswarm to get an easy target to eat. And then you have to get it into your graveyard. Maybe you'll consume it. Maybe you have to do it later round setup. And you get rewarded for that. But then you might get punished again because if you have Sabbath and play Mamuna, then if you get Archgriffin, you have to sack something. And if you're not prepared for that, there are layers there. Is Mamuma really, really generously are costed and very strong right now? Absolutely. But what about 12? Yes. What about 11? Doesn't mean the effect shouldn't be in the game. It's a fundamentally interesting card. It's just too powerful. And
there are very few things I want deleted from Gwent. In fact, there is one thing I want deleted from Gwent.
What's yours? I have one as well. But you already
Alchemist.
Which one?
Alchemist. Viper Witcher Alchemist.
Oh, I agree. Or I find it, just get it off Gorther.
Switch it to top 3 bronze cards, and then that's fine. Or take it out of Gorther Gaved so that if you're running it, there is a punishment for running it rather than there being no punish because you don't have to take it.
Yeah, it's just
that's the only thing that I've ever like Master Mirror Nilfgaard hurts my brain. That Way of the Witcher Nilfgaard, sorry, doesn't make any sense to me. Like it just, the card could read roll dice, win game, and it wouldn't change.
Yeah, it won me $15. It won me 15 or 3 gift subs. We did it was the Altcast or the Bushy host thing. That's Vespesi would win the tournament. We get to the final game, and I'm dead on the water. It's a bad matchup. I'm gonna lose. Then Nilfgaard rolled the Feign Death, and I was just like, well, that's that. Free win for me.
Roll dice, win game.
Give it, or at least give it order for God's sake. Anyways, that card's trash and needs something.
Yeah, and it is also, again, I know it's a conversation that they're aware has been had frequently. It's a conversation that the casters have had. publicly and privately,
Uh-huh.
and lots of other, so I know it's something they are aware of and something they are talking about. I don't know what that means, but I know they listen to this stuff. They don't
Uh-huh.
just listen to wah, but when something becomes notably
Problematic.
contentious, they take note, and whether they change something or they rationalize why they haven't is fine,
Yes.
because they're listening. That's what matters for me.
I
But yeah,
agree.
no, I agree with you. Like, okay, Mamuna is wildly over curve. It bricks at 11. That's insane. But also, it can still be. You could change that card a couple of ways. You could change its provisions. The fact that it's Karentheerable is the bigger problem for me personally. If I can have 2 and even 3 of those, it's just insane. So if it had deploy order, or it couldn't be Karentheered somehow, I think that would be much better. I don't want to delete the ability. Like you said, it's really cool.
Yes.
You're rewarded for playing a synergistic deck.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's do more of that.
Yes.
The same with the Scoia'tael stuff. I love the design of the Whisperer. I just don't like its variants. I don't want a card that can play for 3 or 27. I want a card that can play for 5 or 18, because then it still feels really cool when I get it off, but I don't feel like it's terrible if I lose it. My opponent doesn't have to answer it, but will benefit from doing so. Like it's a numbers game for me. And the new design of those cards is amazing. I just want to make sure that we also get to see other cards as well.
I agree. I know you have a time constraint, and it's been almost 2 hours, so I don't want to...
That went quick.
Yes. So why don't we go ahead and do the following? I wanted to ask you about any future goals and ambitions you have. Anything you wish to share?
Ooh, I'd like to, kind of bland, broad goal, I guess. I want the stream to keep growing. I don't have a number, a target, a feeling. I want the stream to keep feeling like it is, and I want it to keep doing what it does well. Like, I want it to keep feeling like home. I want new people to join and experience what it is, and I want that's the big goal for me. Keep the stream progressing, keep it feeling new and fresh. Obviously, in terms of casting, I want to cast every single event, always, because that's just my nature. Awesome. I love casting Gwent esports, and they are going to have to take me out kicking and screaming if I'm ever not going to be doing it. So, I mean, they're the big two, to be completely honest. I want the stream to keep growing and go and doing what it does, because I love it. It brings me joy and happiness. When the world safely reopens, casting in person would be incredible, and I know the CDPR are desperate for that to happen. I was worried that they'd stay with online opens, because let's be honest, it's massively cheaper. Nope, they want to get back in person as soon as it is safe to do so for everybody, which is really cool to hear. And just get to meet people. Like, I've been involved in Gwent properly again for a couple of years, and just as people started to sort of know who I was, and I had the opportunity to meet all of these new friends, the world shut. So TwitchCon got cancelled, and World Masters got cancelled in person, and all these tournaments that I would have been at, and I would have got to meet all of the players and the other casters and all of these friends of mine. It hasn't happened yet. So I don't want to miss that, and I can't wait for that to be possible, obviously when it's safe for it to be possible.
Excellent. Those are solid future goals, and I think people will be happy that you're trying to grow the stream and you're going to keep on casting. Everyone will be excited about that. Matt, this is your moment. You can talk to the people directly. Tell them whatever you want. Floor is yours.
There's not much more to say, to be honest. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed the chat. As anyone who's ever seen me stream knows, I can talk forever. I am the Gwent streamer who will start Gwent somewhere in the first 6 hours of the stream, maybe. That every time someone new comes in, it's like, are you going to play a game soon? And I just laugh and go, oh, you're new, welcome in. No. It's not out of a lack of love for the game, it's just how I am. I never shut up. But no, it's been a real pleasure. And I hope, I've just been me. It's the only person I can be. So, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Everybody, thank you, Lionhart. For everyone listening, feel free to check out Lionhart on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and at your next Gwent eSport event. Thank you so much. Shout out to Ahmed Ali and McRandar for all their unbelievably generous support on the Patreon.